Applied fMRI Institute. He earned his bachelor's in philosophy from Yale University, master's in counseling psychology from Stanford, and his MD from the University of Connecticut. He was the chief resident of Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I think you probably all know the rest of the history, so I'm just going to let you take it from here.
All right, so I'm going to move along here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are with the autoimmune theory, then talk about oligodendrocytes. This is the work of Barnett and Crinius, who's probably the most respected neuroscientist in this field. Go through the perfusion and diffusion that Mark talked a little bit about, talk about venous hypertension, talk about the blood-brain barrier permeability, and what controls the blood-brain barrier permeability. So, we don't really care about the jugular veins, right? We really care about the brain. In particular, these are where the lesions are. You've seen these over the day. We need to zero in what's happening right there. What's happening right there. So let's start with the, so here's how, this is my own little drawing. This is kind of what our issue is we're going to go through today. So there's a neuron. There's an oligodendrocyte which makes the myelin. The artery becomes a capillary, becomes a venule, becomes veins. So I'm going to kind of have this in the back of our minds for the various theories: the autoimmune theory, the Zamboni theory, and what I call the Hubbard theory. So first of all, let's start with the fact the MS drugs don't work. Okay, 32% to 30. One of them had more, but in general. This is from Ruddick, who's probably a good friend of Jack Burke at the Cleveland Clinic. Here's another version of it. In general, the MS drugs have about a 30% efficacy rate. That's in the placebo range. The reason they do huge trials is not only because they make tons of money at it, but because they have to do huge trials to get statistical significance, because the effectiveness of the drug is not great. Here's one of my favorite slides. This is a review on how to make the differential diagnosis, how to make a diagnosis of MS. 100 conditions sometimes mistaken for MS. MS is a diagnosis of exclusion. Devin was hospitalized for 4 days, $60,000 was the bill, and basically most of the time was spent ruling out every other possible thing, because neurologists have no idea what causes MS, so they have to rule out every other possibility in order to decide, okay, it must be MS. I'm going to read two things at length, because they're just pretty devastating. This is from the main textbook on MS. The possibility of being a primary infectious process with or without an associated autoimmune reaction has not been entirely ruled out, despite repeated failure to identify a causative agent. Over the last 4 decades, at least 14 different viruses have been isolated from the brains of MS patients, yet none has been shown to be etiologically related. Cook listed 22 agents suspected of being related to MS, for which substantial evidence of the causative role has not thus far appeared. Peter Behan is at the University of Glasgow. This is from a paper he did in Expert Review of Neurotherapeutics. These significant data seem to have been ignored by some who are willing to defend the theory that MS is an autoimmune disease mediated by an immunopathological mechanism, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Studies of these agents show that the inability to go beyond the 33% line raise the possibility the entire observed benefit is only a placebo effect. It could be argued that over the years, the autoimmune hypothesis has been harmful to a considerable number of patients. Basic studies on speculative immunological mechanisms are continually shown to be unrewarded. It is clear that modern research should move away from the autoimmune theory. So, this theory is just plain wrong. The standard theory of MS is that white cells, particular T lymphocytes, get out of the, break through the blood-brain barrier, and attack myelin. There's never, everyone has tried for 40 years and billions of dollars to show that that in fact happens, to show that myelin is in fact being attacked by the immune system. There is no evidence after all this effort that the T cells are directly attacking myelin. So, this is the work of Prineas and Barnett. Prineas is now in Sydney. I would say he's maybe the most respected MS neuroscientist in the world today. What he shows is that the oligodendrocytes, the cells that make myelin, they're dying first. It's not that the white cells are coming in and attacking. The cells that make myelin are dying. It's called apoptosis. So, just to start, these are tough slides to look at, but I need to sort of make the point. This is encephalitis. So encephalitis, HIV encephalitis, herpes encephalitis. Encephalitis is a true viral disease with a massive immunological reaction. And what you see is just packed with T cells. Now, you can't really tell this, so you have to take my word for it. This is packed with T cells. Oligodendrocytes and myelin is entirely normal. That's not what you see with MS. With MS, you see what is called apoptotic nuclei. So what that means is that when an oligodendrocyte is dying, its nucleus shrinks and becomes very dark. And so it's the sign of a dying oligodendrocyte. This is the first thing you see in MS. This is actually a picture of a microglial cell. So microglial cells are not T cells. They're not circulating inflammatory cells. They live in the parenchyma of the brain, in the white matter, and they will, when an oligodendrocyte dies, these local microglia, they become activated, and they will clean up the dying oligodendrocyte. After they've done their job, now macrophages come in, and they continue to scavenge to clean up the myelin debris. These are not T cells. These are not precipitating in an autoimmune response. These are the standard macrophages that clean up anything, clean up dead tissue of any kind. This is pretty much normal tissue at the top. This is abnormal tissue at the bottom. This is a patient who died 17 hours after developing an MS lesion of an unrelated cause. So blowing up those four squares, what you see in the upper rectangles on the prior slide is dying oligodendrocytes, and then in the lesion itself, the oligodendrocytes are gone. So they become apoptotic, and then they die and they disappear. There's no immunological response going on here. There's no infiltration of white cells. It's hard to read. It says pre-phagocytosis, phagocytosis, post-phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means a cell eating another cell, eating a dead cell. So this is fairly normal-looking tissue at the top. You see the myelin's all right. Then as you see decreasing myelin, and then finally you see no myelin and macrophages eating the dead myelin. It's really showing us the same thing again. So normal white matter, dying oligodendrocytes. Now, after the oligodendrocytes are dying, now the process of eating those dying oligodendrocytes begins. In other words, once again, it's not an immune attack on myelin, it's immune scavenging of dead cells and myelin debris. This is an axon. This is the myelin. And what